Chapter 4 Evidence 24th day of the 6th month, 695th year. The haze of dusk cut through a gap in the curtains, piercing the dullness. Fugatu lay on his bed, staring intently at the strip of light that made a long line on the closed door opposite. When he woke, his first and only movement had been to grudgingly untangle the blanket and hide under it, leaving only his face exposed. With this done, his fragile mind had cracked with recollection, each crease of his face tensing and his jaw locking tightly. "I don't want to feel this," he told himself over and over. "I must be strong." But the one thought he battled most broke through, and all his efforts crumbled. A painful sob escaped his lips. "My father is dead." The memory of the wolf's blooded teeth flashed before him. Closing his eyes tightly, he pulled the blanket over his face, trying to escape. But the memory remained, and all he could do was cry, sob, and choke as the cool embrace of his loss forced itself upon him. 25th day of the 6th month, 695th year. There was nothing now, nothing left to give as he lay still, his breathing slow and barely noticeable. Time had escaped him, and as he lay under the blanket, some awareness finally returned. Dusk had long since passed, and it had to be some time in the night. All was dark, and he could hear his brothers breathing heavily. He couldn't recall when they had come in, and gave it no more thought. Laying still, he finally repeated the painful thought without breaking down. "My father is dead." He took a long, slow breath and exhaled even slower. How could this have happened? How could such a large wolf exist? Could I have done more? What do I do now? The final memory of his father flashed into his mind. He recalled the discussion about the Book of Prophecy, being given the journal, the wolf attack, and once again those last words. Those words suddenly became an explosive fire in Dragatu's heart and mind. "I will remember my promises," he repeated over and over. The controlled purpose gave him a bittersweet comfort, and his mind relaxed slightly. Letting exhaustion take over, and before he could think about anything else, he fell back asleep. 25th day of the 6th month, 695th year. Dragatu crept by his sleeping brothers. He made his way out of the room, down the hall, passing the library, and crept down the stairs. At the bottom, he turned left towards the back of the house and entered the kitchen. It was quiet in the house. The eerie stillness prickled at the back of his neck. With a glance out the window, he saw that dawn approached. He was so hungry. Once he had a full plate before him, he smothered himself in the bread, inhaling for as long as he could. It was soft on his nose and cheeks, and as he pulled it away, he let a weak smile appear on his face. His stomach gurgled as if calling out for it, and he obeyed happily. Once he had feasted on the bread, some milk, meat, and fruit, he finally felt satisfied and sat on a stool. He then rested his head on the square island table in the center of the kitchen. Eventually, he got off the stool, finally deciding what he was going to do. He retraced his steps to his room and silently emptied the contents of his pack onto his bed, taking the journal in his hand. Leaving the room once more, he walked towards the stairs, but this time entered the door on his right. It was a room he rarely visited, but one his father and mother loved. He wanted to feel close to his father, and this was the ideal place. Row upon row of scrolls lay on the shelves that covered the walls, and a couple housed the rare leather-bound books. The contents of the scrolls varied dramatically. Some were histories of Dragatu's ancestors and family friends, some were housing plans and contracts of trade, and some were stories and fables. Each generation, a couple of really good storytellers were able to circulate their work due to the freedom of their circumstances. The stories always started as scrolls, but those who could afford it turned really good ones into leather-bound books. As with Dragatu's journal, some of the richer people were able to keep their records in leather-bound books, and those in this library were a mixture of stories and journals. The first thing Dragatu noticed was the unique smell. The only way he could describe it was old, but this time the smell took on a new meaning. It brought back comfort, and his mind was filled with memories of Brannon reading stories to him and his brothers. A tear ran down his face, but he brushed it away and sat in one of the comfy chairs near the only window. He opened the front cover of the journal for the first time, and to his surprise, there were words already written. He read quickly. Dear Dragatu, I have given you this journal so you can record your thoughts, feelings, and the events of your life. Records are important, and you will do amazing things. Having a record will allow you and future generations to remember them. So please keep this journal, even if just small entries. I love you and look forward to sharing each experience of your life with you. More tears fell. Dragatu shut the book and wiped the tears away. He needed a distraction. Looking around, he focused on the few shelves with the leather-bound books to his left. He looked back down to the journal and guessed that one day his journal would be added to it. Taking a deep breath, he opened it once more. Where to start, he thought, as he leant over the table on his right. He took a quill and decided to start with his name, and slowly began to write on the next page. After introducing himself and explaining the reasons for writing the journal, he wrote the promises he had made to Brannon. He listed them, giving a brief thought on how he was going to keep them. My promises. Keep a secret and protect the secret. How? Not sure. Should I speak to Mother? Not sure what to do about this. Be a leader. I already am with my friends. Find ways to do this more. Prepare for the future. Not sure what this meant. Think about later. Help people. Be more generous? Means being good. The Book of Law teaches people how to be good, so I need to read it again. This would make Father very proud. After Dragatu had finished, he looked to the wall opposite him and scanned the shelves absently. It wasn't long before his gaze rested on a copy of the Book of Law that was out of place amongst the scrolls. The Book of Law was the only bound book the majority of people in the nation owned. They either had inherited copies, or they traded until they could afford to have one bound for their family. Seeing the book, he wondered why it wasn't with the others and closed his journal, put it on the table and started to rise. As he did, he heard a floorboard creak. He let himself fall softly back into the chair, staring towards the half-open door, listening intently. A figure walked past. Shoulder-length blonde hair, Eunyalus. Dragatu stayed as quiet as he could. He didn't want to talk. To his relief, Eunyalus went down the stairs. I'll look at the Book of Law some other time, when I have more privacy. Taking the journal, he walked as quietly as he could back to his room and decided to get a few more hours sleep. He could face his family later. 26th day of the 6th month, 695th year. Dragatu spent the previous day and this one taking it upon himself to make sure they had everything they needed. It's too soon to ask Mother to take charge, he thought, recalling his attempts to speak to her. Are you alright? He had called through the closed door of her room late the previous afternoon. They hadn't seen her all day, and Dragatu decided to check if she was okay. There was no response, and he knocked louder. There was still no response, and he heard a muffled sob. His hand went down to the handle, but he heard footsteps on the stairs behind him. It was Phenon. Is she okay? He asked, his voice breaking slightly. I don't know, Dragatu replied. It's only been a day for her, Phenon said, his face tensing as he held back his own emotions. I guess, Dragatu replied, knowing Phenon's empathetic insight was right. We'll leave her for now. Let's go prepare some food in case she does come out. Phenon nodded once and gave a strained smile, turning back around. They both walked down the wooden stairs, Phenon running his hand along the banister as he went. 27th day, the 6th month, 695th year. It was another whole day before Helana finally appeared. Eunyalus had returned recently from the farms, and the brothers were gathered in the kitchen. The ghostly figure had appeared unannounced. Mother, Eunyalus asked, looking up from the book he had been reading on the island table. Helana's face was pale. Shadows darkened her reddened eyes, and her long, blonde hair was matted and tangled. The two other boys looked up. Dragatu managed to hold back his shock at seeing his mother so different from how he had always known her. Phenon was less composed and let out a slight gasp. He darted off his stool and hugged her tightly. She seemed to come around with the physical contact and managed to speak, but stumbled. I'm sorry. It's going to take some time. Phenon let her go. It's okay, he said. We have everything under control. Have some food. He took her hand and led her to his stall. He removed the cloth that had been placed over the top of a plate of food and gently placed it in front of her. She nibbled at some of the bread, while Eunyas poured her a cup of water, which she drank quickly. Thank you, she said, her voice quivering a little. We have to be there for each other at this difficult time. We will get through this, one day at a time. As Phinon said, we have everything under control, Dragatu said, smiling softly to her. She smiled back weakly. Your father would be so proud of you all being so strong and brave. I am proud of you. Tomorrow we'll begin trying to get back to normal. She stood, refilled the cup, took the rest of her food, and left the kitchen. The boys sat there, unable to say anything, as they heard her walk up the stairs. The footsteps finally faded, and were gone. She'll be fine, Dragatu said, seeing the look of concern in Phenon's face. Of course she will, Eunyas said, looking back at his book. I know, Phenon replied, giving a brave smile. Has anyone else come by yet? He asked, changing the subject. Word had spread like wildfire through the surrounding areas, and their tragic situation would be common knowledge from north to south and east to west before long. People had already come by to offer their condolences, but Dragatu had politely told them everything was fine and they needed some space. There hasn't been anyone for an hour now, Dragatu said. I think they're getting the hint. They are just worried, Phenon replied. Do you want to have to speak to every person who comes by? Dragatu said hotly. Well, not everyone, Phenon admitted. Well then, be grateful I told them to leave us alone. If anyone else comes, you can answer it. I'm going to ignore them until Mother is better. He sighed. I need some space. I'm going to the library. I don't want to be disturbed. Okay, Phenon replied timidly. Eunyas gave a quick nod and wave of his hand. 6th day of the 7th month, 695th year. The following day had seen a complete change in Helana. She was more focused and began to take the lead again. The brothers were relieved. The days continued to pass, and Helana began to welcome visitors into the home. She kept a brave face, but when the visitors left, she would often return to her room to be alone for a while. The boys soon realized that much of her apparent recovery was a mask. They did their best to give her space and tried to get life back to normal, which was hard as the boys had a lot of free time. This was because Brannon's family was affluent and well connected. Their connections dated back to the time the brick houses were built. Dragatu's great-grandfather had sold his first house and the attached land so he could build his own larger brick house. Yet, unlike others who kept some land to maintain their wealth, he sold everything. As part of the deal, he made contracts with those who purchased the land that the small percentage of the commodities produced or goods traded were forever tied to his family. This meant the family didn't have to work so hard to support themselves. Dragatu spent the recent free time at the ore pits with his friends. They had decided he needed some time away. The visit consisted of games, digging for clay and gems, and telling stories around their campfire. It had been a fun few days of distraction, but when they decided to return home, Dragatu had felt a familiar pang of painful memories. It wasn't helped by an ensuing argument. That's your pile there, Korik pointed, wondering why Dragatu hadn't moved to pack his clay. The 12 boys had started wrapping the clay blocks up in cheap cloth, and a few of them turned to look at Korik and Dragatu. I know, Dragatu said, rubbing his chin. I think we should leave the clay for those who live here. They need it more than we do. Don't worry about them, Korik said, confusion crossing his face. They didn't work for it, we did. We can go to a market and use it to barter for some new flint. Mine's getting blunt. I'd rather give mine to someone here. I think we should give all ours away. None of us really need it, Dragatu replied, thinking of his father and the words from his lessons. What's brought this on? Korik asked, resting his hands on his hips. We've always taken it in the past. I just think the Creator would be happy if we left it for those who have less than we do. All the other boys had turned to watch now. When did you start caring about the Creator? Korik questioned, shaking his head and snorting. Since I started reading the Book of Law, Dragatu mumbled. I believe what it says about helping others. Korik rolled his eyes, dropped his hands from his hips, looked away to the side, and then back to Dragatu. Don't let that book hold you back. If there's such a thing as a creator, I don't think you giving away clay is going to make any difference. Don't you believe in the creator? Drugatu asked. All the other boys stood nodding and shaking their heads in a semicircle as the debate continued. Well, my father says there can't be such a thing as a creator, Korik replied. He says the only proof we have is one book, written by some all-powerful creator, whom we haven't heard from since. He says as long as we make sure we have as much as we want, we'll be happy. A few of the boys shook their heads, but most of them nodded in agreement, nudging each other and whispering. Korik's words made Drugatu think about how Brian had believed in the creator. Drugatu wasn't sure how much he believed, but his father had believed completely. He wanted to stand up for his father, and for the creator. How could he stand his ground? There was no proof. His mind suddenly flashed like lightning to the Book of Prophecy. Drugatu went to speak, and then closed his mouth quickly, remembering his promises. Korik saw the hesitation. Look, I'm not going to stop you if you want to leave yours here. Heck, I wouldn't be able to if I wanted, he grinned. But you shouldn't miss out on the benefits of your work for some mystical creator who never helps us. Drugatu was struggling to know what to say. His father believed, and he thought everyone believed in some way. He wanted to show that giving was better than keeping, but he didn't have any response. It was all new to him. He thought of the Book of Prophecy again, and really wanted to use it to counter Korik's points. But even if he did break his promise, there was no proof. There was nothing he could do, so he stood his ground as best he could. I will leave mine here. I think anyone that wants to should do the same. A few of the boys nodded and said they would. The rest were quiet. Drugatu noticed the hesitation. I don't want this to be an argument that divides us. Look at it this way. It will feel great to help someone else, not just ourselves. Why be greedy when we can give? Drugatu didn't know where the words came from, but as he spoke, they felt right. Fine, fine, Korik said, raising his arms. You'll do what you want, but don't moan at me once I've got new flint and can start fires faster than you. He laughed. The laughter evaporated some of the tension in the group, and Drugatu bowed his head quickly, smiling at the comment. Yeah, but you'll never beat me at wrestling, he then said playfully. Probably not, Korik admitted with a shrug and turned towards the clay. But I always give you a good fight, don't I? Drugatu stepped to his side, and the other boys broke into twos and threes. Always full points for effort, Drugatu continued, and maybe one day you'll keep me down. I doubt it, Korik said with a snort and crouched, adding 3 clay blocks to his pack. So you're leaving yours here, he added, looking to Drugatu's blocks enviously. I guess I can't just leave them lying here, Drugatu admitted. There are plenty of houses around. I'll give them to one of the families. Korik gave a half shake of his head and changed the subject. So, I was thinking we should have a good wash before we leave. You stink worse than a Yui beetle. I think we both do. Drugatu laughed. Race ya, he suddenly shouted, and the two of them raced to the well 200 meters away, the other boys trailing behind. After they washed, the group of boys sat or lay in the sun to dry off. Drugatu sat alone and thought about the debate with Korik. He went over and over it, thinking about Korik's arguments. His mind returned to the Book of Prophecy. Maybe the Book of Prophecy could prove the Creator is real. Surely it would show the Creator cared for us. The Book of Prophecy would show the Creator had given us more than one book. If only I could see the Book of Prophecy for myself, then I would have proof. After some more debating, he made his choice. There's no harm in just seeing the book.